Welcome to How to Be a Couple with me, your host, Giuliano Gramado. Have you ever heard somebody say that coffee is their love language? I always love hearing stuff like that because it lets me know that, the concept of love languages is out there. Like so many people have heard about it to the point where now there's like memes being made, right? About different things being someone's love language. That's great. One of the things I don't like about it though is that it's become sort of a joke. Right? A lot of people are aware of the concept of love languages, but they trivialize how effective it can be. Like how big of a deal it can be in your relationship and how it can translate into happiness. In the last episode, we talked about how important it is to prioritize your own experience in a relationship. Because your perception of the relationship is your reality, right? That is your perception of the relationship is equal to the quality of it. And one of the other things we talked about, though, is that of course you still care about your partner's experience, and that's where love languages comes into play. So, I want to talk a little bit about that today, and I'm going to share with you some very specific examples depending on what your partner's love language is, so that you can make sure that they feel loved because their experience in the relationship matters as well. Just like we talked about before, if your experience dictates the quality of the relationship, part of your experience in the relationship is based on your partner's actions, right? If your partner is constantly happy and supportive and loving, that's going to feel really good, right? And you're going to be like, wow, this is a great relationship. And if they feel loved, they are more inclined to be that way. So if we're talking about things that you have control over, things that you can influence, you can feed into and speak your partner's love language. So here's the thing, right? When it comes to love languages, a lot of people know what theirs is or they've heard of the concept, but it's very few couples who actually use them, right? When I talk to people, like so many people have heard of it, but they don't know what their partners is or it's just kind of like some trivia, like I was mentioning before. And they don't actually turn it into something that translates directly into their relationship, right? They're like aware of it. And so they like might be aware of like how, oh, that just bothered you because this is your love language or whatever. But what we want to do is take that information and use it proactively, right? Because knowing what your partner's love language is doesn't actually help if you don't do anything about it. So, one of the things that I do when it comes to love languages in our relationship is something that for a lot of people, when they first hear it, feels kind of weird. Um, but I don't think that it is. Okay. And I'll explain to you why it feels weird. A lot of people feel like, love. Again, I've said this before, but I really think that like Hollywood and, just movies in general, TV, I think has really warped our view of what relationships are supposed to look like. And so we feel like, the relationship is either supposed to be like magical or it's like this fighting thing, right? But the idea is that people feel like, oh, well, it should just come naturally. Like things should just happen naturally. And while I do, right, obviously I teach about like having the proper perspective and shifting your mindset when it comes to relationships because having that different mindset will affect the results that you get. But again, all of that stems from taking responsibility, right? And like doing something to make it better. And so when it comes to love languages, the idea is that, if you are willing to create a system around making sure that you are speaking your partner's love language and that they feel loved, then you can have a great relationship. But a lot of people feel like, oh, if you have to systemize it, right, then it must not be real. And, it should just come naturally. But that's not true, right? There's a lot of things that we will schedule or do on purpose to take care of, right? When it comes to like our health and our finances and work, right? We have calendars where we put things in and we go, I got to make sure I'm going to the gym today or doing XYZ. So, like, why would the thing that's in our life for a lot of people is one of the most fulfilling, important aspects of their life, their relationship? Why would they not do that for that? So, my, message regarding love languages and systemizing what you're doing is that it's not meant to kill the romance. If anything, it protects it. It puts you in a space where, hey, like I'm guaranteeing that my partner is going to feel loved because I know every day I'm doing these things. Now, it doesn't mean, like, what I want to be clear of here is that I'm not saying that you're just doing this to like go through the motions. I do think that you have to do it with intentionality. And it doesn't mean that you would never do other things to make your partner feel loved. Okay. What I'm talking about when it comes to systemizing, we'll get a little bit more specific here in a second. But what I'm talking about when it comes to systemizing is essentially creating a baseline layer of things that you do every day to make sure that your partner feels loved. And of course, there's things that you will do randomly as they come to your mind because you love your partner and you care about them and you want them to feel loved, that you will do on top of that. But the idea is you have this baseline layer. Right. I was thinking about, I think a good example of this too is like, so my wife and I, we've been trying to get more steps. And so we have a certain number that we want to hit every day. But that doesn't like that number that we hit together isn't our actual total number for the day. It's essentially a baseline, right? If we go and we hit that number of steps, we're going to do more per day because it's inevitable. We're going to be walking and moving around and doing other things. But we've created this baseline level of movement in our bodies because we've committed to, XYZ number of steps per day. So it's the same thing when it comes to this, right? It's not about taking the romance out or never doing anything else. It's about being intentional to make sure that there's this baseline level of, your partner feeling loved. And essentially what you're doing is taking the love languages, that like learning your partner's love language and turning it into a habit to make sure that they always feel that way. So you're doing things that you know are going to actually move the needle. You're planning for it, and it doesn't just rely on like randomness, if that makes sense. So let's talk about some practical examples based on the love languages. If you don't know yours, I don't even know the website, right? Just like look it up, just search love languages quiz or something like that, and you'll be able to figure out what yours is, figure out where your partner's is. Um, the five love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and gifts. And so I'm going to give you some examples for each of these that you can work into your schedule regularly, if they're your partner's love language, so that you make sure that they feel loved on a regular basis. And again, this is not meant to replace random things or taking initiative to do other stuff, but it's meant to ensure this baseline level. So words of affirmation. Here's a couple examples. You could set a daily reminder on your phone to send a message to your partner. You can have it pop up at like, different times every day or the same time, whatever. A reminder that pops up and says, hey, send your partner a text message. It could be that, and like what could help you with that is like whenever you think of something, either you can send it right then, or you can just like have like a running Google Doc or a notes in your notes app of things that you appreciate about your partner. You can leave sticky notes. That's something that I do with my wife. Like every day, part of my morning routine is writing a little sticky note, and I go and I stick it in, on the mirror in our bathroom so that she sees it when she goes in there because that's one of her things. So those are just some examples. Let's talk about quality time. You could schedule like a very specific 30-minute block once a week or once a day or whatever works for your schedule, that you go, hey, this is the time I know like nothing else is I'm not going to allow anything else to interfere with this 30-minute block. You could, during that 30-minute block, right, you could be like, my phone is in another room, or we both put our phones away. I have like one specific question that I'm like prepared to ask my partner so that we can have something to talk about during that time. Let's talk about acts of service. This is something that I do because acts of service is one of my wife's things, love languages. But you can choose like one recurring task that, normally maybe the other person would do, but you could do it instead. For me, I look at it like, for us, I think a good example of this is that I do a lot of the chores around the house, right? Like doing the dishes or doing the laundry. I do it for both of us. And, given our current schedule, it's like it probably would make more sense for her to do it, but that's not the point, right? The way I look at it is I go, and hopefully this gives you some insight into how you can look at this, right? For me, I look at it like, hey, I know that one of my wife's biggest love languages is acts of service, and someone has to do the dishes and someone has to do the laundry. So it might as well be me, right? Even if it's something that maybe it takes a little bit of extra intention on my part because, I have a more, I have a busier schedule per se, right? I'm not saying that necessarily that I'm always busier than my wife, but the point is that I go, hey, someone has to do it. And if my wife's love language is acts of service and it makes her feel loved, when I do things for her, I might as well take that on, because one of us has to do it. So that's a good way to look at it. You can pick one small thing to be done throughout the house, and you just pick it. You're the one that does it. Physical touch. You can say that like whenever you hug the person, you're like, I'm gonna count to 10 or count to 20 or something like that. I know some of these seem silly, but like the point is that you have to find a way to prioritize your partner's love language each and every single day. Another one is like whenever you're in the same room, sit next to them instead of sitting across from them. It could be, every night before you go to bed, it's like you give them a hug or something like that, right? Um, the love language of gifts. I think something that's, underrated and when it comes to gifts is like I think what people don't realize is a lot of these things kind of run together, right? Like think about words of affirmation and gifts, right? Like for me, that's one of the things that I do with my wife because I know gifts is high up on her list as well. So is words of affirmation. Like I told you, if you look up the quiz, it'll give you like a breakdown, like a percentage breakdown of which ones are like the biggest for you. And gifts is pretty high up there for her, but so is words of affirmation. So like those sticky notes, that applies, right? It's something that, she's like, it's funny because I say I do it every day, but I don't do it actually every day, right? I do it like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. So some days she's expecting it, some days she's not. She doesn't know when it's going to happen. And so it's kind of like a random little gift. And for her, I know that she keeps them, right? She has like a little spot where she like puts these sticky notes and she keeps them for later. She does view those as little gifts. So that's an idea for gifts is, those like leaving notes around the house. Um, Another thing you can do is like specifically, I was thinking about there's a lot of things that people were just doing right before like the concept of love languages was even talked about, where I just think about like, oh, someone would come home with flowers for their wife or whatever, right? That just is like a normal thing. Like, oh, you get flowers for her. It's a surprise. Oh, women love surprises. Okay, that's true. But the point is that, I mean, some people don't care. Like some people, like for like me, when I took that quiz for gifts, like, or for love languages, gifts is literally 0% for me. Like I do not care about gifts. And if my wife was just constantly getting me gifts, it's not like it would be a bad thing, but it would just like really wouldn't mean much to me. I'd be like, whatever, I don't care. I don't understand why she keeps buying me stuff. But for your partner that is one of their main love languages, that can be like a really big deal for them, right? So you can, put on your calendar once a week to say, hey, grab something small on the way home from the store, or, keep an eye out during the week for something that reminds me of my partner and make sure to grab it. It doesn't need to be something that's expensive. It doesn't even need to be something you buy, right? You can make something like I mentioned before. You can just write a note or something like that. Um, like I mentioned before, a lot of these things tend to run together, and these are all just like random examples. Okay. I'm happy to help you come up with more if you want, like specific to your situation and like your schedule and what works for you or it doesn't. But the idea is that you figure out things that you can work into your regular schedule that make sure you're fulfilling this need. Right. When you think about your partner's love language, if you know that that is what makes them feel loved, that should be your number one priority, is like making sure that they feel loved and doing those things that make them feel that way. So hopefully these like little, examples were good. And maybe they sparked an idea in you. Here's the thing, okay? When it comes to love languages, it feels like, oh, when it's random, it feels more natural and it feels really good and whatever. But see, this is like a lot of the things that I talk about. I feel like you kind of have to dig like one level deeper. You're like, okay, that's true. It does feel good, but doesn't it also feel good to know that your partner cares so much that you feel that way, that they made it a regular part of their routine to speak your love language? Like, isn't that also romantic? And I'm not saying that it is more romantic, but you could argue that it's even more romantic, instead of just, oh, I happen to think of this. It's like, no, it's so important to my partner that I feel loved, that they make sure that every single day they do this thing to make me feel loved. That's pretty romantic on its own. And when you do that, you're not leaving it up to chance. You're not leaving it up to like, oh, I happened to remember. it's something where you make sure that it's happening. And yeah, you make sure that your partner feels loved. So hopefully that was helpful for you. If you want some help like coming up with, specific examples for you and your situation, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram, howtobeacouple.co. If you want personalized help with your relationship outside of that, I have a wait list going to work with me one on one. You just send me a DM on Instagram, again, howtobeacouple.co, that just says wait list, and I'll be sure to add you to the list and let you know when a slot opens up. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you next time. And yeah, let me know what you come up with as far as the love languages things go. I'd love to, and I'll talk to you next time.